From brutal power to deadly design flaws, these bikes turn riding into a life-or-death gamble. Here are the top 10 most dangerous bikes you've never heard of. Number 10. Suzuki TL1000S. The TL1000S was so unstable, Suzuki had to issue a recall and add a steering damper to prevent violent tank slappers that could literally throw riders off the bike. Suzuki wanted to compete with Ducati's V-twin dominance, so they built this 996cc bike with a rotary rear damper instead of traditional suspension. Sounds innovative, right? Well, innovation sometimes means discovering new ways to crash. The TL1000S developed this charming habit of violent headshake called tank slappers that would literally rip the handlebars from your grip. Riders would be cruising at 80 miles per hour when the bike suddenly started shaking so violently they thought the front wheel was coming off. The scariest part? There was no warning. 1 second you're riding normally, the next you're fighting for your life. And here's the craziest thing about this bike. Suzuki knew there was a problem but kept selling them anyway. It took multiple crashes and injuries before they finally issued that recall. The TL1000S looked great on paper, but in the real world, it was a nightmare. Even with the steering damper fix, experienced riders remained nervous every time they hit a bump. Number 9. Kawasaki H2 750. The H2 750 earned its Widowmaker nickname not just for its power, but because it had the stopping power of a bicycle trying to halt a freight train. The Kawasaki H2 750 earned a nickname that became part of motorcycle folklore. This wasn't just marketing hype, this was a legitimate warning label on two wheels. This bike was 750cc of two-stroke power pushing out around 74 horsepower, massive for the early 70s. But here's where Kawasaki made their fatal mistake. They put all that power into the chassis with brakes that belonged on a moped. Single disc up front, drum in the rear. The power delivery was so abrupt that even experienced riders would get caught off guard. Below 4,000 RPM, it was manageable. Hit that magic number, and suddenly you're holding on to 74 horsepower of pure chaos. Number 8. Yamaha VMAX. The VMAX was designed as a quarter-mile drag racing machine disguised as a cruiser, and its sudden power surge could transform docile riders into unwilling stunt performers. The VMAX is probably the most deceptive bike on this list. It looks like a laid-back cruiser with its low seat, relaxed riding position, and chrome everywhere. But underneath, that cruiser facade beats the heart of a drag racer that doesn't care about your comfort level. The real danger with the VMAX isn't just the power, it's the surprise. You're riding what feels like a comfortable touring bike, maybe you get a little aggressive with the throttle, and suddenly you're doing an unintentional wheelie at 60 miles per hour. The bike doesn't give you warning signs, it just goes from 0 to top speed in the space of a heartbeat. Yamaha called it a muscle cruiser, but they never really explained what that meant. It meant you get all the comfort of a cruiser right up until the moment you don't. It meant you would get the handling characteristics of a boat trying to take off like a rocket ship. The VMAX makes you feel invincible right up until it reminds you that you're not. From my experience with high torque bikes, the VMAX represents everything that can go wrong when comfort meets chaos. Number 7. Suzuki GSX R1100. The GSX R1100 was so raw and powerful that even modern motorcycle reviewers describe it as downright dangerous compared to today's electronically controlled superbikes. The GSX R1100 represents everything that was both amazing and terrifying about 80s and 90s sport bikes. No traction control, no ABS, no electronic nannies. Each generation of the GSX R1100 taught riders something new about fear. The early models were particularly brutal. 145 horsepower with a chassis that was more of a suggestion than a constraint. The later models got better, but better is relative when you're talking about a bike that could hit 175 miles per hour. The handling was the real killer. high-speed wobbles, tank slappers, and a tendency to go light in the front under hard acceleration. Hit a small bump at 120 miles per hour, and the bike would start this slow-motion wobble that felt like it lasted forever. In reality, it was probably 2 seconds, but those were 2 seconds where riders questioned every life choice they'd ever made. Number 6. Suzuki RG500. The RG500 earned its Whispering Death nickname because it gave almost no warning before catastrophic engine failure. Just a faint tinkling sound that preceded total seizure at full throttle. The RG500 was a street-legal race bike with a 2-stroke engine that produced incredible power and incredible unpredictability. And that faint tinkling sound, that was the pistons starting to seize. Riders had maybe 2 seconds to react before the engine locked solid and turned their motorcycle into a 400-pound projectile. Crash reports from the 80s show the same pattern. Rider going fast, slight metallic sound, then catastrophic failure. No warning, no second chances. The psychological aspect is fascinating. RG500 owners knew about the reputation, knew about the risks, but kept riding anyway. Why? Because when it worked, it delivered the most incredible motorcycle experience possible. Pure 2-stroke power, no electronics. Having studied these bikes extensively, the RG500 represents the ultimate gamble, incredible performance with potentially fatal consequences. Number 5. Vincent Black Shadow. Hunter S. Thompson famously said about the Vincent Black Shadow, "If you rode at top speed for any length of time, you would almost certainly die." And he wasn't being dramatic. The Vincent Black Shadow holds a special place in motorcycle history and in motorcycle emergency rooms. This British masterpiece was the fastest production motorcycle in the world for 2 decades, capable of 125 miles per hour when most cars couldn't break 80. But speed without control is just a really expensive way to die. The frame was notoriously flexible, the brakes were barely adequate, and the handling was what you'd politely call adventurous. Here's what really strikes you about the Black Shadow. It was used by police departments to chase down criminals. Police officers, people trained in high-speed pursuits, found this bike challenging enough that many forces eventually banned it from active duty. Collectors who own Black Shadows all say the same thing. It's an incredible machine to look at and a terrifying machine to ride. The power delivery is sudden, the handling is unpredictable, and at speed, it feels like you're barely in control. But here's the really insane part about the Black Shadow, and this is something that'll make you question everything you thought you knew about motorcycle development. Vincent knew the bike was dangerous and marketed it anyway. Their advertising literally boasted about the bike's savage performance and uncompromising power. They turned the danger into a selling point, targeting riders who wanted to prove their manhood by surviving Britain's fastest motorcycle. It wasn't just irresponsible marketing, it was weaponized masculinity on 2 wheels. Number 4. Quasar. Only about 20 Quasars were ever built, making it one of the rarest motorcycles in the world and possibly the most dangerous enclosed motorcycle ever attempted. The Quasar represents everything that can go wrong with a bike. The seating position restricts your vision. The enclosed design eliminates peripheral awareness, and the handling characteristics are unlike anything else on 2 wheels. It's like riding a motorcycle designed by someone who had never actually ridden a motorcycle. The really terrifying part is the lack of feedback. On a normal bike, you can feel when something's about to go wrong. The Quasar gave you no warning. The hub center steering was numb. The enclosed design isolated you from the road, and by the time you realized you were in trouble, it was too late. The Quasar wasn't just dangerous for the rider. That enclosed design meant other drivers couldn't see you properly, couldn't judge your speed or intentions. You were invisible in the worst possible way. From an engineering perspective, the Quasar proves that innovation without practical testing can be deadly. Number 3. Moto Guzzi V8 Auto Cylindri. The Moto Guzzi V8 could hit 170 miles per hour in the 1950s when tire technology, brake technology, and safety gear were still stuck in the Stone Age. This was a 500cc Grand Prix racer with 8 cylinders, producing incredible power for its era, but everything else on the bike was still stuck in the 1950s. The technical specifications are genuinely terrifying. 170 miles per hour on tires that would be considered unsafe for a modern scooter. Brakes that were barely adequate for 70 miles per hour, trying to stop a machine capable of 170 miles per hour. Suspension technology that belonged on a bicycle, not a Grand Prix racer. The psychological profile of V8 riders is fascinating. These were professional racers, people who understood risk better than anyone, and yet multiple riders simply refused to race it. Crash reports from the V8 era make for grim reading. The bike was so far ahead of its time in terms of power that the rest of the technology couldn't keep up. Riders would be doing well in a race, hit top speed, and then discover that the brakes couldn't bring them down from 170 miles per hour quickly enough for the next corner. Number 2. Suzuki TM400 Cyclone. The Suzuki TM400 Cyclone is so infamous that it's often listed as the most dangerous dirt bike ever built, not just by journalists, but by the riders who survived it. Suzuki wanted to dominate motocross, so they built this bike, 400cc of two-stroke power that could theoretically outpower anything on the track. And the problem? They forgot to build a chassis that could handle it. Vintage motocross racers who remember the TM400 era all tell the same story. The bike was absolutely incredible right up until it tried to kill you. The power delivery wasn't just peaky, it was binary. Below 4,000 RPM, it was manageable. Hit that power band, and suddenly you were holding onto a mechanical bull that wanted you dead. The frame was so inadequate that even Suzuki's own test riders were getting injured. The handling characteristics were genuinely terrifying. The rear end would flop you like a fish. That's a direct quote from a period road test. Imagine trying to land a jump when your rear suspension is actively working against you. The bike would throw riders off without warning, without provocation, sometimes for no apparent reason at all. Despite all of this, despite the injuries and the crashed bikes and the terrified riders, the TM400 developed a cult following. People wanted to own the bike that had defeated so many others. It became a badge of honor. Number 1. Maiko 700. The Maiko 700 was so powerful and uncontrollable that it's still used in sidecar cross racing today. Even with the sidecar to help stabilize it, it'll still try to rip your arms off. Choosing the most dangerous bike on this list was incredibly difficult, but the Maiko 700 earned the top spot for one simple reason. It's the only bike on this list that's still actively trying to kill people in 2025. The Maiko doesn't care about your experience level, your riding skills, or your survival instincts. It's going to do what it wants, when it wants, and you're just along for the ride. It's not the chassis that's the problem. The frame is actually pretty good. The suspension is adequate, and the brakes work. The issue is that engine. A motor so brutal, so unfiltered, that it overwhelms everything else. The power delivery is what haunts riders. Below about 3,000 RPM, it's manageable. But then you hit the power band, and suddenly you're holding on to 80 horsepower of unfiltered power. Sidecar racers who still use the Maiko 700 all say the same thing. Even with a sidecar for stability, even with decades of experience, this bike still surprises them, still catches them off guard. From personal experience with extreme motorcycles, this Maiko 700 stands alone as the most uncompromising machine ever built. So there you have it, the 10 most dangerous motorcycles you've probably never heard of. So knowing what you know now, would you ride any of these bikes? Drop your thoughts in the comments because we genuinely want to know what you think. Still feeling brave? Then subscribe to the channel because the next list might just be even wilder. See you next time.